There's gonna be too much chaos in this already, I can tell. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Backspace. I'm Amy Rosenfeld, and today my first guest of 2023 is none other than Adrian Santiago, Books by Adrian.
Hey,
where'd you come from?
I was just sitting here. I didn't even know we were doing it. Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm good. This is going to be fun, I can tell.
Yeah, it was already chaos before we started recording, so here we are. But
the good kind of chaos, not the Richard Holiday kind.
Shots fired.
Right off the bat. Let's just get things started that way.
Okay. Anyway, for those of you who may not know Mr. Adrian Santiago, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you very much. Hi, I'm Adrian Santiago. I run an online author platform called Books by Adrian. I have a short story that's currently out. It's called The Death and Rebirth of Bella Erdman. You can get it on ebook. You can get it on paperback. Ebook is only 99 cents, so that's the way to go. And this is a prologue lead-in to my debut novel, which, as of right now, officially releases April 30th. So... yay!
Exciting stuff. And we're going to be talking about that stuff a little bit later.
Ooh, spoilers.
Spoilers! Why? I'm not this chaotic.
I bring it out in you.
Yes, that's probably it. Every writer has got stuff that made them want to write, stuff that sort of inspired them to start writing, so we're going to be diving into that. Let us start off with, when did you first kind of discover that you wanted to get into writing and creative writing and make all these kinds of stories?
I've always written, if that makes sense, but I never thought of myself as a writer for a very long time. Like in middle school and high school, English and writing classes were always the easiest for me. They were always the ones where I was getting straight A's no matter what. And they were the ones where like I didn't even do anything until the day before it was due, and I would just do something really quick and I would turn it in and get a decent grade. So I knew that I was good at it. I did a lot of reading, especially back then, and usually like way above everybody else in my class's reading level. Like I was reading Michael Crichton books in like 5th and 6th grade. The storytelling was always a part of all that stuff, you know. Movies, TV, I love stories. And at a certain point in my life, probably like 10, 15 years ago now, I was just like, you know what, I want to like actually be a writer. I want to put out movies someday or run a show, run a TV show or any of that stuff. Like I want to do it all. I want to touch all the writing things. And then I decided to start with a graphic novel. I thought that would be a good, starting point. And then I had a really cool idea for one, and I pitched it to my best friend, and he was like, "We could totally do that. I got an artist, and I got another guy. Let's get together. Let's do this." I'm cool. And we worked on it for a really long time, plotting it together, like in a writer's room. And then it fell to me to write the scripts. And I worked on those scripts for the better part of like 5 years and never turned them into them because they were all garbage and I couldn't make anything work. And I realized that I was a terrible writer and I needed to become a good writer before I could tackle that particular project. And so I went off on my own and wrote a novel, and that's what this all became.
What was the graphic novel about, if you remember?
So it's something that we all plan on returning to eventually. But we have always been very like open about like what we want to do. So it's a graphic novel series called Dusk, and it's about the real world and the dream world both being like real places. And when humans sleep, they visit the dream world in some capacity, but it's a real place with real people that it's got a whole realm. And then there's a kind of people who can travel between both, and they're playing like world domination chess games, basically, where they're like going into people's dreams and messing with them and trying to get real world results by influencing people through their dreams. And it becomes this whole crazy thing. It was supposed to be like this big, like huge, like epic series, and we hope to get back to it. But when we started that, we all told each other, if this book doesn't belong on a shelf next to Watchmen and The Sandman and Dark Knight Returns, then there's no reason to even try writing it. Like, it needs to be like one of the greatest graphic novels ever. And again, a first-time writer who's never done anything before was like, I can't do that yet. So we'll get back to that someday.
It's great that you like noticed that from like such a early point, because I think myself and a few other writers have always been like, this is good as like you're writing it, but then you look back and editing it and you're like, okay, there's problems.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I haven't been back to that source material from Dusk for a good 3 or 4 years at this point, so I'm kind of afraid to go back and look at it all and see how bad it really is. But the story that we came up with is pretty cool. Like, I really want to write that story. I think it's going to be really good, and it might not end up being a graphic novel. It might end up being a TV show someday or something. But we're going to do something with it for sure.
I mean, I'm hooked. I'm a sucker for like different interpretations on like dreams and stuff like that, like the fantasy and the sci-fi sides of dreams.
Yeah, we were basically gonna turn it into like a big sci-fi epic, magic and all that, but it all comes from the power of dreams.
So you mentioned some of the story ideas that you've had, but what about the stories that have inspired you? These don't have to be just books, because you are a man of a bunch of different mediums. So sure. What were the stories that inspired you to start writing, or to like make yourself a better writer, or come up with these ideas?
The novel that I have coming out in April is a big like jambalaya. It's my homage to everything that I love. So I learned how to plot story by listening to the writers of Breaking Bad and learning from their process. And my influences as far as like the novel goes is I read a lot of George R.R. Martin. I love A Song of Ice and Fire. I'm a huge fan of those books. I reread them all the time. Of course, Lord of the Rings, Tolkien. A lot of Neil Gaiman. I read a lot of Neil Gaiman. Like, probably 70% of the books on these shelves are Neil Gaiman. Like, it's basically him and a couple other people.
We got a super fan.
Yeah, I'm a big Neil Gaiman fan. So I took some pointers from him, and then just the movies and TVs that I love. Christopher Nolan. The fact that his movies are like tentpole moments in pop culture. Like, every couple of years there's a Chris Nolan movie and everybody goes to watch it because Christopher Nolan has a movie out right now, and that's kind of like what I want my books to be. Like, every time there's a new Adrian Santiago book, I want people to be like, oh dude, like the new like Books by Adrian book is out, like we got to check this shit out, it's gonna be big. So I'm taking all of those things and trying to like craft like my own version of all the things that all the authors do. Neil Gaiman, for example, in American Gods, he taught me about like scaring away the wrong audience right away. So prior to American Gods, it's not necessarily that his books were all family books. They weren't. He wrote a lot of horror and stuff like that, but they were always on the magical side and whimsical and fantastical, and so they were accessible to a very wide audience. But American Gods was from the jump meant to be a very, very adult book, and so he got his point across in the first page by dropping the F-bomb like 9 times in the first like couple paragraphs, and then after the first chapter, he has an interlude, and it makes you go like, wait a minute, we just had chapter 1 and already we have an interlude? And it's like, yeah, it's because I need to give you this scene about like a goddess of love and beauty, and posing as a lady of the night, and she's tricking her John into worshiping her so that she can devour him through her vagina. And by the end of that, you're like, you know what? This book is either not for me, and I'm gonna put it down, or okay, I understand what I'm reading now, let's go, you know. So that I kind of brought a little bit of that into my book too. I'm like, you know what, let's put like drugs and stuff right at the beginning, so like if you're not cool with drugs, just get on out, because you know, stuff like that.
When it comes to you and your writing, what would you find to be the hardest parts of the process?
Well, I always used to say finding time is the hardest part, is like just finding time to sit down and write. But I've recently become a little more honest with myself. Resistance makes you throw up. Procrastination makes you throw up. Oh, I don't have time. Yes, you do. You have time. You can make it. Like, so the hardest part, now that I have literally finished my novel, probably the initial like first draft, like getting through that first draft is probably the hardest part for me, because no matter how pragmatic you might try to be, deep down you want it to be awesome off the jump. Like you want to write that first draft and be like, this is a masterpiece, and it's never going to be like that on the first draft. The first draft is going to be garbage. That's what it's supposed to be. But as the writer, you don't, you know, deep down you don't want that. You want it to be awesome. So I think that first draft is the hardest part, because it makes you like delay finishing it, because you keep saying to yourself, oh, it's not good enough yet, I gotta keep making it better. And it's like, no, just finish it. They don't have to know that you didn't know what you were doing all along. You can just make it look that way in the second draft.
Oh boy. That spoke to me, because I'm pretty sure that's what happened with my ASTER'S CODA series. Like
that's how it is.
The first draft, what the fuck was that? The second draft, this is an actual cohesive story.
And the middle part, I don't know about you, but the middle part of the book is the hardest thing for me. Like I can write a solid beginning and I can write a pretty good ending, but that middle part, like making it tie together, is a nightmare.
Oh yeah, when I outline,
so
I always struggle to come up with the middle stuff.
Oh, me too.
Moving over the hardest parts, what about your favorites? Your favorite parts in the writing process? Whether that's a feeling or an actual thing that you do, what's your favorite?
I mean, I love creating characters. Writing dialogue is one of my favorite things. It used to be like my weakest part of my writing was my dialogue, and I worked on it so hard that now it's probably my strongest part, and everything else I need to like beef up. So I love dialogue. My favorite part of like the whole process though was probably finishing that first draft. Like when I finished that first draft, that kind of like sigh of relief of like, oh my god, like that was madness. I got through it. I can't believe it. And then weirdly enough, the moment where I was like, this is the final draft, and I just finished the final draft, and I'm like now uploading it, and I'm like getting a page count, and I'm ordering the cover, like that's the craziest moment to me, where I'm like, oh my god, like there's a book I made it, like it's about to come out. It's just insane to me.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, like when you're able to see that cover, when you get that to you, it's gonna be insane.
And I'm like super psyched about the cover, because I had this idea for a cover, and I took it to a bunch of different cover artists. I even went to Meblart, which everybody raves about, and everybody was like, we can't make that work. How about this other idea instead? And I'm like, that's not as good. I don't like that idea. And so I bounced around, and I finally found one where I gave her my pitch, and she goes, ooh, a challenge. And I'm like, that's what I'm talking about.
Yes,
that's what I want.
Like,
yes, let's go. And then she's been like, we've been back and forth, like sharing information. She hasn't actually started on it yet, but there's a lot of like kind of complex sci-fi crap that I want on the cover, and so like getting her to understand the concepts and everything has been really fun, and she's into it. She's got good ideas for how to make the idea of the cover work, and she's already making changes to the idea that make me go, that's how it should be done. Very good. Yes, do that instead of what I said. And it's just, I'm so excited. I can't wait to see something. I'm gonna puke. Just from excitement, just from like, oh my god, it's amazing.
I hope you don't. Throwing up is not a pleasant sensation. It's not pleasant. All right. Well, we've already talked bits and pieces about your novel that's coming out, so we're going to move on to the section all about your novel. Ooh.
Right. I'm into it.
Fantastic.
I'm following your lead. I'm like, I don't hear any music, but let's jam.
There will be music in post.
Okay.
It's probably not going to be this kind of music, but yeah.
You should find something that goes with this. So like,
I think I've got a few options. How about you give us the pitch of your novel? Tell us about your novel that's coming out, Mythic, Shadow of the Spark.
so the series is called Mythic, and Shadow of the Spark is the first book of like a big trilogy that I have planned. Thousands and thousands of years in the future, humanity has forgotten its history and is doomed to repeat it. Humanity has left Earth because a cataclysm was coming to it, and we've wandered the galaxy for thousands of years looking for a new home, and we're out there for so long that was just our life for generations and generations, and wars happened and all kinds of crazy crap, and a group of us broke away from all those traveling humans and decided we don't want a war anymore, we want to be peaceful, and we're going to go find our own place. And they found a planet, a ringed planet without a moon, and they discovered that they can't live on the planet, but they were going to make it their home anyway. So they combined all their starships together and created the Spark, which is this gigantic, like moon-sized space station. Basically, it's like cities and cities and cities all together in this one place, the last of humanity in this one place. And we've had a good 300 years of peaceful living on there, but now crime is on the rise, and murders are happening more and more, and people are going missing, and things are getting kind of bad in the political sphere, and weird stuff is happening on the Spark. And our story begins when a rookie detective is assigned a new case that's supposed to be an open and shut murder-suicide, just, these two people killed each other and that's it, you're done. And it was not that. It's something much more complex and much more involved. And so our detective, Migdalia Vandersea, goes on this crazy case which entangles her with a hippie witch and a bounty hunter on a redemption arc. And they're chasing a serial killer, and there's all kinds of crazy magic stuff happening that they don't understand. It's a big sci-fi fantasy murder mystery, and it's just, as I said before, a big melting pot. There's a little bit of everything in there.
Yeah, you've been lately introducing some of these characters over on your Instagram. I've been loving seeing like the pictures and stuff. Cool. That you managed to get of them. Is there anything more that you can tell us about these different characters? Any favorites that you had written? Any
Sure.
ones that really troubled you throughout the process?
Well, so in this prologue lead-in short story, you meet this character Bella, and this is like her whole pilgrimage thing where she goes out into the big city for a year and lives away from her family for a year, and then she gets to choose whether she wants to come back and do that lifestyle forever or stay out in the world. Because she did not plan ahead for this, she ends up settling for the drug dealing black sheep of her family who left the family and never came back. And so this short story takes place in this one night, her one night out on the city, what she does that night with her cousin and this hippie, drug dealer that they're visiting, and they have a crazy little psychedelic adventure there. But these two characters, Mitch and Bella, are the dead bodies on the floor in chapter 1. When our main character, detective, finds them, we as the reader have met them and are hopefully attached to them a little bit. When I wrote that short story, a character that had been living in my head for years kind of appeared. She's that hippie witch character. I've had her in my brain for years, and I've tried putting her in lots of different stories, and she never fit. It was never right. And suddenly she just kind of like walked into the room on this one, and I was like, oh, there she is. That's where she goes, right there. And then so she's one of our other main characters. We have the detective, we have the witch, her name is Faye, and we have the bounty hunter character, his name is Lear. And the three of them are on their own sort of story arcs, their own kind of journeys, but they're all connected through this case. Faye was the last person to see the victims alive, so she's basically a witness in the case in that way. And our bounty hunter character, Lear, is tracking down somebody who is involved in this whole mystery. Those three main characters, Lear, Migdalia, and Faye, are all introduced in that short story. You have the short story, and then you have 3 sample chapters afterwards. And so the first chapter is Migdalia, the second chapter is Lear, and the third chapter is Faye. And it sets up the mystery of the book. And as far as like favorites and stuff, Faye is a big favorite. I love writing for her. She has, aura seeing powers and all kinds of cool little things about her. So when you're in her point of view, things are a little more magical. And then Migdalia was another one who was very interesting to write because she's this very young and promising detective who likes to kind of think outside the box with things. And she's been given this case that everybody expects her to just kind of like, get through it. It's easy, cut and dry, but she's able to see the things that all of them missed, and that's what leads to this grand adventure. So she's really interesting to like be in her head. And like, the coolest parts of writing her is when she turns off all the high-tech sci-fi gadgets and just uses the old noodle instead. And that's some of the best stuff there. And then Lear is like he's like a, I don't know, like a wishful thinking kind of thing. Like if I was like the coolest version of me, that it might be Lear. He's like way cool. It's not like he's me. He's like what I wish I was. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of like that.
The sci-fi elements of it. So you've already mentioned a little bit about like this entire like Starfleet looking planet type thing, and like the different kinds of technology and how there's a bit of like magic involved. Could you tell us a little bit more about that side of things?
Sure. So the plan here is to have a mostly sci-fi setting with little bits of magic that sort of build throughout the book. And then the idea is for the series to get more and more fantasy as you go along while not losing the sci-fi. It's going to be tricky, but I think I can do it. Each book will have its own sort of flavor. You're still going to get both sides in each book, so I'm hoping I don't alienate or lose anybody in the transition. But I already know that the second book is going to be way bigger than the first, which is saying a lot because the first one is big. So so we'll see how all that goes. But the sci-fi stuff is very I don't want to say Blade Runner because I'm not a huge Blade Runner guy. But the sort of like grungy, lived in kind of vibe of that stuff is what I'm going for. The whole idea that like this place has been here for a good 300 years now, and it's starting to look a little old and a little run down, and everything is a little bit lived in, and nothing's progressed too much in a while. This very, very technologically advanced place that has not advanced in a while. And so like there's a lot of stuff that'll make you go like, oh, that's a cool gadget. They've had it for like 100 years at this point. Like they should really have something better by now.
I love that. And just like the fantasy combined with like the tech side of sci-fi and all that kind of stuff. I miss that. I severely want more of that. There's only like, one book I think that I've read that includes that kind of stuff. So I'm absolutely getting your book because I want more of that shit.
The sci-fi fantasy like combo is always like, it's chocolate and peanut butter. You know what I mean? Like these two things go perfectly well together.
One last question surrounding your book. Your favorite scene to write. Without giving away too many spoilers, what was your favorite scene to write?
Well, there's one big like huge action sequence towards the end, like a few chapters from the end, where like all of our main characters are in the same place and they're all fighting the same fight together in their own way. So that was a lot of fun. Editing it was not fun because it was there's a lot of like continuity stuff in those two chapters, but that whole sequence was a lot of fun to write. And the setting is based off of a real place that I used to work at, so I had like a really good awareness of the space and like how it all connects and works together. So that really helped to write that scene. There's a couple of sex scenes in it too. If anybody is not cool with that, fair warning. There's a few spicy scenes. Those are always fun to write, for different reasons. But actually, they are you do have to kind of write them like action scenes. It's kind of funny. You do, because what they're doing has to matter emotionally, and that's what makes a good fight scene. A good fight scene or a good action scene you have to care about the stakes, you have to care about the characters involved in the fight, and the fight itself has to tell a story. And it's the same is true for sex scenes, in my opinion.
You're not the first person that I know whose favorite scenes to write are like the high action stuff and then the wink wink high action stuff.
Well, I mean, you like what you like.
We're gonna break things up a little bit now.
Okay.
Every guest that I have on here, I play a little game with them.
Oh no. I'm scared.
So, we're going to be calling this game a trait of nouns. So, there is a common trope within fantasy fiction specifically where every novel nowadays is always called like a something of something else. So, we're going to see how well you know your X's of Y's. I'm going to be saying the start of one of these.
Okay.
The Y's, and you have to tell me from a multiple choice what that last word in the sequence is.
Okay, I dig it. Let's do it.
You dig it? All right. So the start of this one is 6 of, and your 4 answers are 6 of ravens, crows, owls, or hawks.
Want to say ravens, but it seems too obvious. I'm going to go with probably the least likely and say owls.
You were close.
I was close.
It wasn't ravens.
Okay.
It was crows.
It was
6 of crows. Yes.
6 of crows.
Let's try this next one out. So your starting is C of, and your options are stars, thieves, gods, or monsters.
Could be any of those. All right, so my gut was Sea of Stars because that reminds me of that Incubus song where it says that the ocean looks like 1,000 diamonds streamed across a blue blanket. I'm gonna go with stars. Sea of Stars.
The answer was Sea of Monsters, a Percy Jackson book.
I'm doing terribly. I'm doing really bad.
I think there is one that has like Sea of Stars at the end of it.
It
like
sounds familiar. Yeah, it sounds familiar.
There's like something else at the start of it, which is why I included it, because it was like da 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 Sea of Stars.
If there isn't a book called Sea of Stars, then I'm gonna have to write it because that's a title that's just sitting there, like waiting for somebody to take it.
MYTHIC, Sea of Stars.
Boom, book 4 done. It's no longer a trilogy.
Let's try this one now. The
Okay.
beginning is way of. Your answers are monsters, gods, kings, or pawns.
That last one was pawns.
Yeah, like a chess piece. I know my accent makes it sound weird.
It makes it sound like porn. I'm gonna guess Way of Kings.
You got one right!
Hey!
Yeah, I think, oh my gosh, I should have checked this up. Way of Kings is a Sanderson novel? Wait, I need to Google this to make sure it's right. Way of Kings. Yeah,
I haven't
Sanderson.
read it, but I haven't read it, but that's probably why I guessed it correctly. I've heard a lot of Sanderson titles recently. They're all being talked about right now, so I probably heard it.
Yeah, Sanderson's huge. So we're going to be talking a little bit about the Books by Adrian brand, the Books by Adrian platform. A lot of your content has been around interviewing a whole bunch of fellow authors. So where did you start to get the idea to just do this gigantic interview series and just finding all these different guests from everywhere in the author online sphere? Where did that come from, I guess?
It came from a desire to do something other than what I saw most other author tubers do. I started the whole author tube thing because I started writing the novel, and I knew from finishing the prologue, the short story that spawned the whole thing. From finishing that, I knew that I was going to finish this novel. Like, unlike everything else I had started before, this one I was going to finish. So I wanted to build an online platform to start collecting an audience who would be waiting for the book. It's all well and good to work on a book for 3 years, but if then you release it and nobody knows who you are and nobody buys it, then what was that for? So I've spent the last 3 years trying to build up an audience for myself, but when I looked at other author tubers, even the bigger ones, your Jenna Moressis and your Meglators and all that, they are doing how-to videos. But in my case, I hadn't written anything professionally before. I wasn't published yet. And so I was sitting there going, who's going to want advice from somebody who's never done this before? That's ridiculous. My channel should not be me giving writing advice. Who am I to do that? What I can do is collect other people who do know what they're talking about and pick their brain and learn from them. And in that way, improve my own writing, but also give other people a chance to find these art authors who may or may not be getting seen by them and check out their writing and stuff. A lot of times you're scrolling through Amazon and you see a book and you think it might be interesting, and then you keep scrolling. But if you see that author talk about their stuff on my channel, you might be more inclined to be like, I'm going to check that out because that author was a nice person and they were funny. And I thought that they were, the story that they told was really cool. So I'm going to check it out. So it comes from a place of me wanting to learn, me wanting to improve, me wanting to help others do the same. And at the same time, like supporting all these other authors somewhat selfishly, so they'll support me when the time comes. You know what I mean? Like like this, like I had you on my channel and now you're having me on yours, and I'm like, that's freaking awesome. That's what this is all about. Like,
I agree with you. It is like severely rewarding.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, I think the kind of stuff that you had been doing with all these interviews and stuff was one of the reasons that I started doing them, albeit less frequently, on my own channel.
It all like unwound naturally too, is the weirdest thing, because like I just had his name is Colin Clark. He was a writer on AuthorTube at the time. When I first started my channel, he and I hit it off right away. He liked some of my writing. He read like my prologue and fell in love with Faye, and it's a whole thing. So he's always like, hey, when are there more Faye chapters coming out? I'm like, you... so I had him on the channel because we were both like big serial killer story fans, and we got on to talk true crime.
Thank God you said story fans after that.
Oh no,
I was
of course.
about to be like,
we're both really big time serial killers. We meet once a year and exchange souvenirs. No, so we had that episode to talk about serial killers and true crime and fictional ones as well, and that just happened to be on a Sunday, so I just named it Livestream Sunday because it was a live stream on Sunday. And I don't think anybody was in the audience. I don't think anybody was watching. I had like 2 subscribers at the time, like it was nothing. But that just kept happening. I kept having people on Sundays, and then before I knew it, I had a show called Livestream Sunday that like now I wish I had titled something cooler. But that's the one that I think people get most excited for on the channel, because that's the big interview show. That's the one where I showcase a different author or creative person. It doesn't always have to be an author. I've had people on who weren't authors. I had an artist who designs characters for authors. I had a marketing guy come on and teach us about marketing. I had a musician come on and tell us about scoring stories, because I thought that there was a lot that we could learn about storytelling from a musician who puts music to your stories. So yeah, there's all kinds of cool stuff like that.
We're going to be finishing off this episode of the Backspace here. So Adrian, is there anything that you would like to say to close us off? Anything you want to promote? Anybody else you want to promote or something? I don't know. Take it away.
All right, cool. Yeah. So booksbyadrian.com is where you can go to sign up for my newsletter, and my newsletter subscribers are the first ones to find out about everything. They're going to get the cover reveal first. They got pre-orders up first. The novel is up and open for pre-orders. It doesn't have a cover yet, but you can pre-order it. So go to the website for that as well. And I can't think of anything else. Just, the novel comes out April 30th. Be ready. It's a wild ride. It's a weird novel. I hope you guys like it. I worked at it really hard.
I love the weird. And I'm so excited that your hard work is about to pay off when it gets put out into the world, hopefully on April 30th. Oh, actually, this is one question that I wanted to include. In this 2023 series going forward, what book are you currently reading right now?
Okay. So for my it's an ebook. So for my Tuber Book Club, which is a book club on my channel where we read books written by other people like ourselves, author tubers. We're reading right now Dulcie's Legacy by Margaret Pinard. It's a
Margaret
YA.
Pinard!
Yeah, she's awesome. It's a YA fantasy, and it's fantastic so far. It's the first YA book I've ever read. I've never read YA before, so that's been interesting for me as well. And I don't know, it's really good so far. And then I'm also reading for myself this summer. I am reading Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss.
I literally just got that this last week.
I'm also
I literally
reading,
just found it in the thrift shop.
and I'm also reading Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. Yes. Oh, and then one of the sci-fi books I will be reading, I haven't started yet, but that's going to be Proto by Chris Kenny. He's another one of our author friends. He's been on my show a couple times now, and this promises to be a very, very cool new series called The Manhattan Split. So check that out if you're a sci-fi person.
We're gonna say thank you guys for coming and watching, and stick around, subscribe so you can check out when the next episode of the Backspace is coming out, and of course check out Adrian and his stuff. And with that, we will see you guys around. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.